Welcome to another edition of Discover Trempealeau County. Today we're going to be talking about Christmas in Trempealeau County and wintertime in Trempealeau County. Surviving winter and celebrating the holidays provides both challenges and wonderful times for the people in a rural area like ours. Today we're in Pigeon Falls to talk about the winter wonderland that is Trempealeau County and how the Christmas holiday was celebrated in the past. We have with us today Conrad Johnstad, who many of you know from his role as a band leader known throughout the Midwest. And we've got with us Goodie Ringlien to help talk about what Christmas in Trempealeau County means to us. I was just looking through some of the old pictures that were brought in, and the first thing I'm seeing here is that it's not all sweet memories of sledding and caroling. Here we've got a picture, Conrad and Goodie, of an accident of a milk truck. You know, that's things happened back then too, with the roads and the snow that made one, you know, wonder how do they ever manage to get their business done. Do you know anything about this picture, Goodie? Is this,
no, but we had a milk truck that that went off the road right in front of our house, and it took a whole day to get it out.
Yeah.
And it had to end up with the maintainer coming.
Oh, yeah.
And that was on April 10th.
Oh, my. Well, so the point is here that...
winter was a long time.
Winter was a long time, and there was a lot to deal with, wasn't there?
Yeah.
Mr. Tensett, he had the mail route, and he had a sled driven by horses that he delivered mail with. And I recall that sled so vividly because it was parked behind a shed, and John Gordon, Munson, and myself, we used to play in that. And of course, he retired that, I suppose, in about 1934, 5, something like that.
So he delivered the mail in the rural areas?
Yes.
Was it a covered sled or open?
Yeah. Oh, indeed so. It was a home-built sled, yes.
And was this a daily route?
Oh, I'm sure. I'm not sure of that. I don't know.
Yeah.
I was pretty young. I don't recall that.
My grandfather had the route number 1 out of Pigeon Falls.
Oh, really?
Yeah.
With
Sleigh.
horses?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now, getting ready for winter in the rural areas, that had to be something for, you know, most everybody lived on the farms back then, so that generally involved getting the last of the corn crop off.
Right. It was corn shredding then.
And that was...
picket then.
You ever get caught with the weather?
Oh, I suppose they did.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
And getting that wood pile ready.
That was my job at our home. We lived in Pigeon Falls, and I'm sure every family experienced that, where the boys had to split wood.
Yeah.
Ready for the winter, sure.
Yeah. What else needed to be done on the farm to get ready for for winter, Goodie?
Well, all the crops had to be in, the cattle had to be in, and like different people other than us had cattle on a different 80.
Yeah.
And so our young stock were on a different farm, and they had to be brought to the barn, and there were no trailers to haul them. So we chased them all the way down the road and had somebody stand in every driveway. But then there were fences along the road, and now, you know, there are hardly any fences left.
Mm-hmm.
So that was quite a thing. And then I remember distinctly when I was a kid once, we had them all ready to go out in the road.
This would have been in the fall, getting them ready to come back to the
November.
homestead. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
And Howard Ackley went by and honked the horn. They all took off for the woods. So we had to start all over again. Yeah, so that was a big thing, getting all the cattle back to the home place.
Mm-hmm. And deer hunting then? It wasn't as big a thing as it is today.
Well, it was, of course, there were more people hunting, but it was quite a time in the lives of all of the men especially. I recall my first hunting trip was, I was 12 years old, and my father gave me a .38 Winchester with one slug, with one bullet. And he said, you better make that good. And we hunted out east of Black River Falls, and I shot a deer, trailed it, and Helmer Hagen watched me shoot that, and he watched another guy come and take it away from me.
Oh my.
That was my first experience of deer hunting. But I've had many successes and many happy times doing that. I know that in Pigeon Falls, my father and a number of people would tent out. They'd go places like, like Art Dahl. He'd go up to northern Wisconsin too, and they'd hunt every season, a full season, and they tented out. And that was quite a thing, you know. There was one. I wanted to.
There wasn't the deer population right locally in Trempealeau County back then, was there?
Right. I hunted and fished all my life when I was growing up. I did. I traveled extensively around the country. I knew every nook and cranny. And the first deer the imprint that I ever saw was in Section 1 above Northfield. My Uncle Clifford Beatty had rented a farm there, and I spotted that, and I followed that for a while and then later lost it. But that's very rare did you see deer here during my growth time.
And nowadays, there's a lot of them. And it's gotten to be where that deer hunting season at the end of November is almost the beginning of the holiday season, isn't it?
It really is. It really is.
And it's Old Home Week. People that come back to do their deer hunting. And
I've got a funny incident about deer hunting. My father and there were 7, 8 others having coffee in Carl Mohn's restaurant here in Pigeon Falls. Oscar Sletland was sitting in the booth stirring his coffee. And Oscar said, "Come here, Ivor." So my father came over and sat down. Oscar said, "It must be nice to be able to take 4 or 5 days off and go out in the woods and hunt and have fun." And my father looked at him and says, "Well, if you'd have saved your money when you were a child, you could too." And Oscar got up and walked out. But he laughed about it afterwards.
Of course, Oscar was the local banker.
Oh, he was a very nice man.
Yeah. Then as winter set in, dealing with the cold weather was an issue, especially again on the farms and watering and feeding the cattle.
And a lot of times I'm sure it was the same all over. The young stock were housed, and we'd have them make a little house and put the straw stack over that so that their house,
sort of an insulation for them.
Their shelter was in the straw stack, you know, in this little space. And I think they just run a hose out every day.
Either that or chop the hole in the creek, right? Or in the ice.
In the ice. Yeah. I know at our place there was no creek on that side of the road, so.
It was always warm in the barn, though, wasn't it?
Very warm.
It was always a nice place to be.
Nice, fun place to be.
In bad weather.
Yeah. Oh, yeah.
And no heat, just from the cattle.
For sure.
Yeah.
Well, even now, when we had fans running all winter.
Yeah.
Because the cattle give off so much heat.
Yeah. And of course, that all leads up to getting ready for the holiday season, the baking.
Butchering first.
Butchering, okay.
Had to butcher.
Yeah.
On the farm.
Tell us a little more about that.
Well, I can remember that they hung them up in the lean-to by the granary. I can remember the big hooks up in the ceiling. And my dad and my grandpa, I don't think either one ever owned a gun. So it was Matt Luckin that come and took care of that. And they pulled them up with a pulley and a rope. And then they had these scrapers for the pigs. You know, they scraped them.
Sure.
And saved the blood, of course, to make crib. That went in the house right away. Made head cheese out of the heads.
Wow.
And used the tongues and the heart and made sandwich meat and
Well, sure.
canned stuff. And there's still hooks in the attic for where they hung the dried beef and all that stuff.
So obviously, colder weather was a better time to be dealing with
Sure.
with butchering, wasn't it?
Made
Yeah.
chitterule where you put the flank out on the table, you know, and put the spices on, roll it up, cook it, press it.
This was the hogs and beef. Did you do beef too?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Ready.
What about in the home? We're going to talk about the baking and getting ready for Christmas.
I don't know, but I have my wife is half Norwegian and half Czechoslovakian, and she says there is no such thing as a fatemannbakel. I say she's wrong. And,
Now, what is that, Connie?
it's a delicacy. We know.
We know.
But yeah, the ladies, they all took care of the goodies, didn't they, Goodie?
Yeah. Rosettes and sunbakels.
Oh, fatemannbakels.
Fatiman and made the lefse and the flatbread and
Strul. Yeah. It was more of a religious type atmosphere, I think, than it is probably today.
This would have been a Christmas Eve program or service.
Usually the Christmas programs were held prior to Christmas Eve, as I recall. But on Christmas Eve, there was usually a church service. And then we, at our home, and I imagine many others were like that, we would have the reading of the Bible. And of course, we'd had oyster stew at our home. And then we'd go to bed. And Santa Claus would arrive during the night. And my first recollection of that, of course, was when Lorraine, Donna, and I awoke very early, possibly 4 o'clock in the morning, and I had a toy trumpet, and Lorraine had an accordion, I believe, and Donna Mae had a snare drum, and we paraded around the Christmas tree.
At that hour in the morning?
And I'm sure my parents put a stop to that. But it was kind of fun. You know, it was a lot of fun.
Yeah.
A lot of good memory.
Yeah. The shopping back then and the gifts. Today, everyone goes to Eau Claire, La Crosse for shopping. What happened for gifts back then? I don't think it was quite the big issue it is today.
I recall vividly that particular area in the fact we did not receive a lot of toys. Most of our gifts that we received were clothing, and I remember specifically, you really had it made when you got high-top boots with a little pocket knife in the side, and I think all the young boys in the country got reveled when they got that. You know, that was a nice Christmas.
Yeah. Well, there was at some point, I suppose, where probably in the 50s or so, people started going to the cities to do some shopping.
Made one trip to Eau Claire.
For Christmas?
For Christmas, and maybe to get new clothes to wear. And I can remember the big thing was to end up at Kresge's, because they had a place to sit in the front window. There we'd sit then with my dad and wait for Ma to come.
Oh, yeah.
But I mean, around here, and probably in other small towns, in Pigeon, Reynolds and Neppy had these small tables in between all over, so that you could shop for most anything.
They brought it in.
They brought it in. It was very, you could buy most anything you wanted to in Pigeon. I remember, I never went to our Sunshine School right next door, but I went to Pigeon. But I think I remember going to the school programs in other schools, and, you took all the desks out, and you put chairs up, and you had the put up a wire, and you had a stage. You made a stage, and you just got along.
Oh, sure.
And it was packed with people. And when I was in 7th and 8th grade, we walked across the road. In 7th grade, we had it in the upstairs in that old hall. It was across from the school. And then 8th grade, the new church was built, and it had a stage. And we had our program in the new church.
Wow.
Are you talking about the big church hall that burned?
Yeah, it didn't burn.
Oh, they tore it down.
Tore it down.
Okay, I can remember.
Yeah. You just got along. They sat in the windowsills and wherever they could. It was a school program.
What about decorating back then, inside and outside? Now we have all these outside decorations. Back then there weren't too many of
No, there weren't.
Candle in the window.
them. Yeah.
There weren't any. I remember the first decorations we had on the farm. I thought it was so wonderful. I cut out Merry Christmas on cardboard and put aluminum foil around it and hung it on the screens, on this screen in the porch. And that was, I thought it was just wonderful.
Huh? We used to pop popcorn, and string popcorn and put that around the tree. I recall that.
Yeah.
Popcorn balls.
Popcorn balls.
Yeah, we had those. Mm-hmm.
You talk about going to Minneapolis in Curtis's van. We had Luther League back in those days. We went caroling every winter, and we went in Donald Ackley's milk truck. And he had to take do you think about it? He had to take all the cans out, and he put benches in the van, and we all got in the van, shut the door, completely dark, and we went all over the country roads. And
bouncing around.
Caroling, never think a thing of it. It was probably 30 below. He helped us. They got out of there, and they put the cans back in.
My grandfather and grandmother lived in Ringlien. They lived in Northfield in the country. And I recall Otis Samuelson and Marvel Samuelson, my cousin Don Lundberg from Minneapolis, and myself. We went Eula bucking.
Oh, yes.
And we had to walk 2 miles over to this one place.
Now, what is that now?
Well, it's you dress up like a fool and
it's
try to
Christmas fooling.
Yes,
if I heard that term.
Yeah. And this was practice throughout the entire county, I'm sure. And
now, when did this take place? Right after Christmas?
The 13 days after Christmas.
Okay.
Yeah. And we had such a good time. And now I've got a humorous, I think it's humorous. About 10 years ago, Claire, my sisters Lorraine and Donna, and my wife and I, and a couple others, we were sitting talking about Eula bucking. Well, let's do it. I said, okay. So we all dressed up. My wife put a floral robe on me with a mask, and then a round pillow on top of my head. And so we were going to go to Strum, to Eula. So we were going to go to Noble Cleveland's first. And we got there, and they weren't home. Passing through Strum on the way to Noble's, we saw a multitude of cars. And my wife says, well, there must be a function going on here. Well, we drove to Noble's, and they were not here. Well, let's go see Jule and Norma Berge. Went up, they weren't there either. Let's go see Jerry and Elaine Niesman. They weren't there either. Well, they must be downtown. They must be having a Christmas party or something. We'll fool them. So we walked in, and I, in this horrendous costume, walked in, and a man come running by and said, shh, shh. And here, it wasn't a community program. It was a wake.
Oh, my, Connie.
It was a wake for my good, to this day. She was such a good friend, and to this day, Dennis thinks it was the most hilarious thing that ever hit Strum.
Now, part of the Christmas fooling was to disguise yourself, so they didn't necessarily know.
Masks on.
And they tried to guess who you were.
Yes.
We would, when I was a teenager, we walked the coulee. I mean, walked the whole coulee, Christmas fooling. And then when some of them got cars, then we would go in cars. And there were certain places that you wanted to for sure go.
Now, they would expect this, so they might have some special treats for you?
As soon as Christmas was over, you would be sure you had treats. And Arnie Hansen's was one of the places where we surely wanted to go. Well, then after we were married, we went with Howard and Barbara and some of those. And one thing I can remember, we'd go to Irvin Hagen's over in Fuller Cooley.
Oh, yes.
With a wood stove. A lot of them had the wood stove. And it was probably 90 degrees in there. And they'd always be very slow in guessing us, because that way we'd have to suffer with all this stuff on us. And you'd get wine, or most of the time was wine, or a hard drink, and
cookies,
sunbuckles, or Fatiman. And you just go from house to house. And
singing?
Oh no, we talked Norwegian and all kinds of stuff like that.
Yeah.
So this wasn't caroling?
No, this wasn't caroling. Mm-hmm. And then, of course, in latter years, when after we were married, we were with Howard and Barbara a lot. And maybe at 12 o'clock in the morning, Howard would have to call somebody to see if they were up. Things like that. By that time, we kind of didn't know for sure what we were doing.
Yeah. I would like to remind you of the tough times that people had during the Depression. I was about 11 years old. That would make it 1936. Could have been 37. I heard my mother crying. And I heard Dad say, what are you crying about, Olga? He said, well, we've got all these people coming for Christmas, it's a tradition, and we have no way to serve, we don't have any meat. Mm. Well, being a hunter.
Resourceful.
Resourceful, I don't know how. Anyway, I had access to a 22 rifle and a single-shot rifle. I had money. I shined shoes and stuff like that, and sold popcorn and all that. I always had money, not much, but enough to buy a box of 22 shells. And the snow was just a huge amount of snow, waist high, you might say, as I crawled through the fields at Melvin Tangens, who lived a block from the edge of town. They had a huge haystack there where all the pheasants hung out, and it was dark. It was probably 9 o'clock at night, pitch black. Or it was not. It was just as bright as day. It was one of those days.
You mean what, the moon?
Right, exactly. Yeah. And I laid it, and I shot, and I shot, and I shot. I got 9 or 10 pheasants. I put them in a bag, brought them home.
What was the bag limit then?
I don't know. Fred Gardner laughed about it when I told him, so it was all right. But anyway, we had roast pheasant for dinner.
And this was during the Depression and tough times.
You bet. Yeah. You bet. You bet.
Goodie, you and your husband Ken live on a farm near Pigeon Falls. I understand that your farm is adjacent to where there used to be a large ski jumping hill, and that your husband Ken was a ski jumper.
Yeah, when Kenny's mother passed away, we were cleaning out the house, and there was this box of medals. And they were the medals from the 1954 and 54 ski jumping that was never held. And this was the patch of the flying pigeon.
Never held for what reason?
The snow melted.
Oh, okay.
That was it.
I designed that. I founded that club.
Yeah, and that's the Flying Pigeon Junior Ski Club. And that was held at the Ide Hill on W out of Pigeon. And you see how they used to ski with their arms out like this. And they had regular, this is for the 55 season, which never was, but he already had his a ski association.
You said you found those medals and you distributed
I
them?
distributed them among all skiers.
Recently?
Yeah.
Yes.
You
That was so
tracked
nice.
them down, or?
No, I sent letters.
That was so nice.
And we had ski jumps in Whitehall, in the county, and in Pigeon Falls. Were there others?
Oh, I'm sure there were around the county. There were lots of ski jumping.
Strum had one. Whitehall Record Breakers had one. Pigeon Falls had one. Marvin Madison, north of town here, they had a ski slide there. We held tournaments
Now,
there.
what years are we talking about for the ski jumping?
I could ski before I could walk, you might say. That's what we all did. All of us
In the
boys.
40s, I think.
Her family, everybody had skis.
And it lasted until how long?
Well, the flying pigeons lasted until 1954. It's the last year.
Here's a program from, must have been one of the ski jumps. Okay, Sunday, February 18th, 1951.
51.
Well, what strikes me here is how many people were involved. We're talking,
There were.
well, 32,
100
33, 74, 115, 153.
Jumpers
Is that right?
in pigeon. Right.
Now they came from all around the area.
Sure. The ski clubs. Wheeler, Pigeon, Maryland, Chautauqua, Eau Claire. Eau Claire flying, you know. And Westby. And then they go all over too, the same way.
So there'd be one probably every week somewhere, or scheduled anyway?
Right. And then they sold concessions. There was hot dogs, hot chocolate, and coffee.
Here's a picture of the crowd and the concessions. I see they've got a loudspeaker car.
But
And what are the little twigs here? The little
those are
branches.
Markers.
markers
Oh, for how many feet you jumped?
No.
to show where the edge of the
Right.
jump was.
And here's a picture of somebody actually jumping. They caught somebody in the air.
I
in
can
this old photograph.
probably tell you who that is.
I'm sure it's probably one of the Ringlien boys.
Were there prizes?
Well, let me tell you who that
Yes.
is. That's Conrad Johnstad. That's not Bob Martin, no. It's Conrad Johnstad, because I was the only one, the only one that wore a shirt and a tie. And that's a fact.
Oh, okay.
Well, anyway, they had prizes and the medals, and then they always got together in the town hall and gave out their prizes
The
afterwards.
competition.
And some of the mothers then would fix barbecue and cake and stuff. And of course, I never skied, but our family always went. All the families, regardless if you had skiers, when it wasn't pigeon, they went.
Now, what happened? I guess it lasted into the 50s. What caused it to stop, to die out? Just lack of interest? A lot of other things going on.
Television.
Yeah, really.
Some hockey, ice skating.
Oh, the hockey that we played was disastrous. We'd have 2 sticks of wood on each end of the rink, and anything went. No rules whatsoever. None. I remember my cousin Gabe Johnstad coming along at high speed. This is between Christmas and New Year's. They'd had a rink out here in the pond, and my cousin came skating very fast and spun around and hit my dad right across the nose with his hockey stick, and O.B. slid under. They were all good skaters, you know.
Yeah. They use hockey skates or figure skates?
They were just hockey skates.
Hockey skates.
Ben Sutlan or Ben Luckin was the only man in town that had the racer skates.
Okay.
And he was so graceful. He'd skate up the river and back down, you know, so graceful, hands behind his back, and such a nice man. Yeah.
Well, skating, too. We did a lot of skating. You know, when I was in grade school, that was in the early 50s. And we skated when we got to school, off the bus from the town. We We skated at recess, which was 15 minutes, and at noon, and at second recess. So we figure it took us 5 minutes to put our skates on. We skated for 5 minutes and 5 minutes to take them off. But everybody skated.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And on the farms, we skated up and down the creek or any place there was ice.
Sure.
But everybody skated.
A lot of times by the skating rink, they'd have a warming house with
They did in Pigeon.
We don't have that
a little
here.
wood stove in it, and a place to go in and warm up.
No, I don't know if kids don't skate very much anymore.
No.
And we always went sliding every chance we had.
More snow back then too, they say.
Oh, a
I
lot
don't
more
know.
snow. A lot more snow.
Are you sure it wasn't just because you were smaller and the
No.
drift seemed bigger?
Well, I think the adults were so, the men were so aware of the needs of the young fellows and that they would help and provide.
Getting the rinks ready.
Exactly. And the ski hills. They,
Yeah. That was quite a structure.
Oh, indeed. Art Dahl did a great deal
How
of
many
work.
feet high was that?
Pardon?
How many feet high was where these ski hills?
Well, we had the Ide Hill was a natural hill, and then we, I think the first that I recollect was a pole, no, a wooden trees felled, and they built a scaffold about 20 feet high at the top of the hill. Then you had to go down that, and then you followed the natural terrain, and you hit the takeoff was huge, and it was pointed quite an angle. So the skier, as he emerged, he flew tree height to a very poor landing because the landing was quite flat. I recall Benny Borison coming down and going off the side and landing in the treetops and going all the way down. He did not hurt himself a bit. And I'm still wondering why.
There must have been some injuries though along the way, I suppose.
Pardon?
There must have been some injuries along the way.
Oh, lots of them.
Yeah. And here we have a photo of cutting ice. Storing ice for the summer, I guess.
What's this?
Cutting ice.
Oh, yes.
They cut ice on the
Right out here.
right out here.
And my father used to get them for shaves after they were done. Woolly beards, 10 cents a piece.
What is this now?
My father used to shave those guys.
Oh, okay.
They'd let their beards grow, and after the ice cutting season, they'd come in and Dad would shave them for a dime a shave.
Well, the beard was just to help them stay.
Oh, keep them, I suppose.
The ice house was behind the creamery, right?
Yeah.
That's where they kept the ice.
Oh, yeah.
You know.
And then there was a route in this. How did you get access to the ice in the summertime? Was there a route or?
I used to take my wagon and go to the ice house, uncover it, and then with tongs put the ice in the wagon and take it home.
Okay, so ice was buried in sawdust? Was
Oh,
it
yes.
For
Yes,
insulation?
yes.
And lasted pretty well into the...
Oh, yes. Through the summer, you know.
Mhm.
It was always kind of comforting in the summer to go there. It was a cooling off period. I say how fortunate I was and we are of living in a small area such as Trempealeau County, the rural areas and the villages, and that to have live in an area where people cared about you. They knew what was going on, and if you need help, they're always there. They're always there.
That's really that is the Christmas spirit, isn't
That
it?
is the true Christmas spirit, and you'll find that prevalent in most all small communities in our county here. As you get into the larger communities, people don't know their next door neighbor, you know, and they don't care.
And Christmas really does get to be an opportunity for each of us to show our family members and friends
Fellowship, exactly.
that we love them and we think about them through giving gifts.
Exactly.
I remember my dad being on the town board. There was no welfare in those days, but the town board took care of it. And I remember my mom making many boxes of fruit and meat and butter and Christmas baking, and he would deliver to the, you might say, the poor in the town of Pigeon. And I'm sure that went on in every township.
I agree. That's right.
Of course, the rural schools, they always had a community club.
Oh, yeah.
And so, other than the school program, you had community club during Christmas and with big programs, and then they probably at the end of the night, you'd have somebody that in the coulee that could play the fiddle or the accordion, and you'd put everything away and dance and have lots to eat. And
some people know me, I guess, as some sort of an entertainer, and one of my first performances was at the Huskula Schoolhouse, north of Pigeon Falls, and it was the Christmas program, and I made my debut singing "Tiptoe Through the Tulips." Little did I realize that so many years later, Tiny Tim would make that popular.
Kind of an odd time. Was that during Christmas?
Yes.
Okay.
I was 3 years old.
think of in Trempealeau County now that the community that still has their school and does all these things is Glasgow Hardy's Creek down by Galesville.
Oh, yes.
And they still have these wonderful programs and things like that.
Of course, always dealing with the cold and the dark.
Yeah.
You know, trying to start those old cars.
Oh.
Putting chains on.
Yeah.
To get places, you know. But it didn't seem to bother. It didn't seem to hinder anybody from going anywhere.
Well, we didn't own a car during my lifetime in Pigeon Falls. I think it was a wise decision on my father's part.
What about getting into the New Year's celebration? The New Year's, how did that go after Christmas?
I played one in 1937 at Strum.
Okay.
1938. I think it was 1938. We played, and it was a New Year's Eve party. And when we finished, it was 30 below zero.
Oh, my.
And the car that we were driving, someone stole the side curtains off the car, and then someone found a horse blanket to put over me and Lloyd Melby and a couple others. So we got a ride home safely. But I've never yet figured out how the driver, whoever it was, I don't remember, ever made it home because it was so cold, so cold.
My dad always said that, nothing ever stopped him from going to a dance.
No.
They went to house parties and things all winter. It could be 50 below, and they'd go in their sleigh.
Uh-huh.
And, well, when I was, especially in high school, I remember the Pigeon Fireman's Dance was in January in Osseo. Nobody ever missed it. It was usually 20 below, and nobody ever missed it. Maybe Art Dahl or somebody from the fire department would stay home, so there was a fire. In case there was a fire, cold didn't stop us, and we dressed for the cold. Now they don't wear clothes to go with it.
I remember a Christmas party at the SAF Hall. It's a Scandinavian American Fraternity Hall, which is located at the top of the first curve leaving Pigeon Falls on W. And they danced, they do. Oh, they had such a good time. It was a big soap. But the pail, my grandfather, Albert Renai, was a small man and often always smoked a pipe and always wore a long coat. His compadre was Einar Isaacson, who lived on the edge of town here and was the father of my uncle. Picture this. the end of the dance. Einer walked out with his white hat. He took his white hat off, smoking his pipe, dropped his pipe, looked at the audience, and he said, "Ladies and gentlemen, being as I am assessor of this town of Pigeon, and I am also the dance inspector, you have been such good people. I will let you have one more dance and then sweet home sweet." And I'll never forget that. But I just Christmas was a happy time.
Yeah,
It really was.
well, and you think about the time of the year, it's dark and it's cold, and yet it's our most joyous holiday.
Right.
And I don't know if it's because it's dark and cold that people want to do something with the lights and the gatherings, but it's kind of ironic that that's the case.
Well, those of us who embrace the Christian faith, we're pleased to know that we celebrate the birth of Christ.
Yes,
And,
of course, that's the reason for the celebration.
Right, right. And I think it's important we not lose sight of that. I guess and I'm sure we don't.
Okay, Wade, this has been very interesting. We'd like to thank everyone for joining us in this discussion of wintertime and Christmas in rural Trempealeau County. Thank you, Conrad Johnstad and Goodie Ringlien, and thank you for supporting Trempealeau County Community Television.